Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I'm your host and CEO of Vitality OET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes and night sweats, irritability and brain fog, or that weight gain around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere despite you not changing anything. So you go back to cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, the things that used to work. Yet for some reason now it seems like you're putting in all this effort and you're not seeing changes. You start feeling worse and you might actually see the scale go in the opposite direction than what you want. But we know now that your body is inherently different than what it was prior to you experiencing these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to help you really understand how your body changes in this time of your life so you can reach your health and fitness goals, live a life full of vitality, feel in control and at home in your body again, so you can finally get to where you need to be and really understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today, I want to talk about the pillars of a great menopause metabolism boosting workout. I'm going to start off by talking a bit about what happens to your hormones, special considerations for that, and then of course the meat and potatoes of everything you need to know of kind of the checklist of what is going to indicate a great workout for you, how can you really maximize your results, and help you move through that yourself. So typically what's going to happen is we're going to start seeing some pretty major body composition changes in the 3 to 5 years prior to menopause. We suddenly start to notice that there might be like an increase in your fat storage. Maybe there's a decrease in lean muscle mass. You start feeling maybe a little bit more soft or fluffy. You just don't feel fit and toned despite how hard you're working. It's like your body fat percentage goes up despite you're working really hard. This is the time that most of us are going, what the heck is going on? Like, what I used to do isn't working. Why is my body not responding? Is there something wrong with me? Am I broken? You just feel like your body has completely betrayed you. And suddenly we're storing more fat in our midsection, which nobody wants. We're finding that we're a lot more tired. We aren't as strong as we used to be. And what we used to do to really counterbalance that weight gain just isn't working. And we just don't understand why, which can leave us feeling frustrated and hopeless. And honestly, it just makes us feel like giving up. So now more than ever, we need to really do everything that we can to create and support a healthy metabolism. And the way that we train is going to play a huge role in this. So first, I want you to understand a few things about hormones. We're going to touch on things a little bit. I know I talk about hormones a lot, so we have some more specific hormone type podcasts that you can go back to. But I just like to give everyone kind of a good basis of things if this is your first episode that you're listening to. So we have 3 types of estrogen in our body. E1 is produced in fat cells, and the more fat that we have, more E1 is going to be produced. It's the type of estrogen that's going to increase our hot flashes, our night sweats, heart palpitations. So it's really important that we lower our overall body fat percentage so that we can help with menopausal symptoms so we don't have as much E1 being created. Then we have E2, and this is the form of estrogen that decreases during perimenopause and onwards. It has a lot of really important roles, and one of those is helping us stay in what we call an anabolic state, which means our body builds muscle more readily. So when E2 goes down, we have a much harder time being able to build and maintain muscle mass because that's one of its big benefits of having it in our body. And then we have E3, which is a type of estrogen that is present in myself right now because I'm pregnant. So we know that estrogen drops as we approach perimenopause and menopause, but what actually happens to our body when this happens? We hear, oh yeah, estrogen is going to go down, but what does that really mean for you in like the real world? So one is muscle growth. We'll have a much harder time building and maintaining muscle mass when we see E2, that estrogen, start to go down, making us more catabolic, which means our body wants to break down muscle mass for energy, which we don't want because muscle is going to make us look fit. It's going to keep us strong. It's going to keep our metabolism up because muscle burns a lot of calories at rest. And also it helps us with insulin sensitivity. So you have better blood sugar control with the more muscle that we have. Then we see mitochondrial function. So our bodies have a much harder time using stored energy for fuel when our estrogen goes down. So this means that we need to make sure we're eating before our meals because we can't readily access energy stores like we did before, which means then we're not getting as much out of our workouts. We're leaving a lot on the table. We're also going to see that inflammation is going to go up when estrogen goes down. We're going to see blood sugar control starts to go down when estrogen goes down, which is going to increase fat storage as well. We're going to see appetite starts getting out of control in some women. So the hormones that tell us that we're hungry go up, and the hormones that tell us that we're full go down. So we're not satisfied as well when we're having our treats and things like that. And then bone mass, we're going to see a decrease in calcium absorption when estrogen goes down, which is why exercise is also important for maintaining bone density as best as we can. So that's estrogen. Then we have progesterone. So around perimenopause is when our body's levels of progesterone start to break down, and we're going to see a rise and fall, and then eventually progesterone is just going to taper down. Okay, and we reach full on menopause, which is 1 full year without a cycle. When progesterone levels are not where they should be, like when we're going through perimenopause and onwards, it can cause estrogen levels to get too high in comparison to progesterone. They should be in balance. So sometimes people will start to have crappy symptoms from estrogen dominance, but it's not that your body's producing too much estrogen. It's that you don't have enough progesterone to match with estrogen to kind of keep it in check, because estrogen can be very dramatic, and progesterone's like the voice of reason that keeps estrogen in check. So we all have that one friend that's like, I think you might be overreacting. Maybe let's look at the other side of this situation. That's progesterone. And then estrogen's that one friend that's like flies off the handle, and like if something bad happens, she's like, I will be there for you. I will do this. I will do that. I will say something. So that's kind of, if you were to kind of put two different personalities to them, that's how they are. So progesterone is going to help keep estrogen in check. And it's going to help balance estrogen's normally anabolic nature. So this building part, right? And progesterone acts as its counterbalance to break things down so we don't have too much building and we don't have too much breaking down. So progesterone's job is going to be to break down some of those free amino acids, which your body would normally use as building blocks to give to estrogen to help us build muscle. So now that we have a body that no longer really has the hormones to build and maintain lean muscle mass like it used to, we have a much reduced ability to turn stored energy into fuel. We also have a tendency towards estrogen dominance and fat storage that comes along with that. More insulin resistance, which again leads to more fat storage. We can have uncontrolled hunger. Our body wants to keep breaking down muscle mass for energy. And what ends up happening from all these hormonal shifts is a body composition shift where we see a increase in our body fat and a decrease in our muscle tone, or how much muscle we have, a decrease in our metabolism, so we're burning less calories at rest, and an increase in fluid retention. And all of that is going to cause the scale to go up, and we're going to see an increase in our body fat percentage, which we do not want. So now that I've given you some pretty terrible news, how do we address all of that, right? This is going to be done by externally coaxing our bodies to do what our hormones used to be able to do internally. So, Steph, what does that look like? Because that's not helpful, right? So, resistance training. This is super important. The sooner that you start, if you have women in your life, young women in their 20s, in their 30s, really try and encourage them to do resistance training, because the sooner you start, the better you're likely going to be at managing your hormonal symptoms. Lean muscle mass is calorically expensive, which means the more muscle that you have, the more calories your body is going to burn at rest. Okay, so that's really good. That means that we can eat more food and not see weight gain, which is amazing. Nobody wants to be eating like a bird. That's not a good time. So aside from being able to eat more while still maintaining your weight, you're going to have a ton of benefits of strength training that include a ton of things that I'm going to cover here. So the first is, of course, it's going to promote an increased metabolic rate, which means your metabolism is going to go up, which is good because we know from past dieting history and eating too low calorie for too long and doing the wrong kinds of exercise like cardio, we're going to see our metabolism slow down. Our body is not very good at burning calories. So we want to have as much lean muscle mass as we can to have a leaner physique, to have some tone, to look fit, and keep our metabolism up nice and high. If we can increase our metabolism at rest, then we can increase the number of calories we can use at rest, which is amazing. It increases the calories out just by you sitting there, which is a pretty awesome thing to hear. The next is actually improving posture and stability. Oh my goodness, you guys, this is such a game changer. So, my first love was actually personal training. I loved rehab. This was like a huge thing for me. I used to run all the exercise, chronic disease exercise management programs for a part of the health region here in Saskatchewan back in the day. I worked in gyms as a personal training manager. I taught exercise physiology at the university level. I did some labs as well. I worked as a trainer and exercise therapist for a very long time, as an osteo, pairing all that in the rehab space. And the benefits from strength training are unmatched when it comes to this area. So think about your posture, first of all. If you have poor posture, you're typically not going to look as fit. You're not going to look as toned. As if like you're rounding at the shoulders, belly pooch is naturally going to like stick out more. If your shoulders are pulled back and you have good posture, belly pooch won't stick out as much. Like you're naturally going to look better if you have better posture. But not just that, you're going to have so much more of an increase in your joint strength and your stability, which becomes a huge issue with aging, especially during menopause. We see increased joint pain due to the increase in inflammation and the decrease of estrogen. And I'm known for shoulder rehab. That was like my big niche back in the day. I used to work with a lot of hockey players and things like that too. I used to work pretty closely with a couple of doctors as well. And shoulders were like my main thing. Obviously, I did a little bit of everything, but shoulders was where I really shone, I guess, if you want to call it. But by increasing your strength among joints, especially the shoulder joint, which is a very unstable joint, oh man, the amount of benefit you can have from that is insane. So by strengthening up the muscles that typically are stretched out more, or they feel quote unquote tight, but they're actually weak, you can improve like joint pain. You can improve your posture. Headaches and migraines tend to improve. It's crazy how much when I started working on releasing things in the front of the chest and the front of the neck, and then really working on stabilizing the shoulder blades and strengthening up the back, how much better people's migraines would be. They'd be very infrequent, which is amazing. So there are a lot of things, not just like, metabolism and looking fit, that are beneficial from your strength training. Like you'll go and do some, like this is part of the reason that I left the health region when I was working as an exercise therapist, was you get people and certain practitioners just giving you band exercises all the time. Band exercises for your shoulder. But you need to have enough of a stimulus for your muscles to actually get stronger. If you're just giving someone band exercises forever and they are used to having to pick up toddlers and, move stuff around the kitchen and having to reach overhead to grab plates or get on their hands and knees and be able to get up when they're doing whatever it is that they're doing, band exercises aren't enough to match like what your body actually needs during everyday life. So being able to do strength training, even just a couple times a week, can do wonders for you. Coach Amy was working with a woman who has scoliosis, and she did 6 months or 8 months, I can't remember, of reversing, really focusing on feeding herself enough food to really build up her muscles and, strength train and see those changes. And her posture is unbelievable. I still have to ask her if I can use photos to share with you guys, but unbelievable, a change in posture. And I was like, man, she must feel so much better. Like, look at her shoulder position. It's sitting where it should be compared to her before pictures. You don't realize how much those little things can impact your quality of life, especially when you're not aware that that's part of the problem. So sorry, I digress a little bit, but benefit of strength training is improving your posture, your stability, joint strength, which does tend to get worse as we age. Not to mention having stronger bones as well. Heavy resistance training is so good for remodeling bone structure, improving bone mineral density. And we know when estrogen goes down, we're going to start seeing a decrease in our bone density. And we don't want to have osteoporosis. We don't want to have breaks and fractures. We know that if you have a hip fracture, that typically decreases your life expectancy by 7 years. We don't want that. We don't want you to have to experience that just from like tripping and falling because you're not in a resilient state. And then, of course, maintaining healthy body composition. It's going to help in the maintenance and building of lean muscle mass and the reduction of fat storage. By lifting heavy, we send the signal to our brain that says, hey, we need to like get stronger. We need to overcome this stress. And remember, we talked about how lean muscle mass decreases when estrogen goes down. So we need to have the type of stimulus that's going to override that low estrogen response to really improve your muscle mass. And resistance training is the only way to alter body composition. Nutrition will definitely help. Obviously, that's going to help you with weight loss and providing you with enough calories and nutrients to be able to build muscle. But in the absence of resistance training, you're not going to see an increase in muscle mass. Like you need to be sending that signal to your brain of, hey, I need to get heavier. So for example, let's say I'm doing a bicep curl and I always pick up 10 pounds and I'm always doing 15 reps and just going up and down, up and down, up and down. Your body doesn't have to change because your body already knows it can do that. It's not struggling to do that. So why would it waste energy to make more muscle to lift something when it doesn't need to? Whereas if you're doing resistance training and it's like, man, Steph keeps trying to lift heavier every week. Man, she is like really making us have more time under tension and slowing down. Like, man, like we need to do something to make sure that we can keep doing it because I don't know what's going on, but Stephanie seems to have this need of lifting things that are heavy. So we need to make sure that we are actually sending like that signal to build the muscle so that you can do the things, the demands that you're putting on your body. So if you keep doing the same thing all the time, you're not going to see any changes because your body has no reason to change. So where do we start when it comes to resistance training? There's so many questions and so many ways to adjust things for you. So how often? That's one of the first questions. How often do I have to work out? So first of all, ask yourself, realistically, what can you actually do consistently every single week and stick to it and start there? For a lot of people, they're like, I want to work out 5 days a week. And I'm like, no, what's on your worst, busiest week? How many sessions can you guarantee that you'll get in? For a lot of people, 2 to 3 days a week is a great place to start, and you might not even have to increase that. I only work out, actually lately I've been working out like garbage, which I've now gotten a trainer, so that's going to be amazing, where I'll be working out 2 days a week, and then I'm going to try and do a bonus one at home. But that's what it looks like. That's the structure. Okay, even coaches have coaches. So that's a great place to start. You don't have to work out every single day. Movement is great, get it where you can, but like being in a gym or doing a weight training program doesn't have to be more than 2 to 3 days a week. You can get results that way. The next one is how long? Because people are like, how long do I have to work out for? And I say, how often, like how long do you want to work out? What's realistic for you? Is it 30 minutes, your max? Is it 45? Is it an hour? You can get a lot done and be productive and see changes in 30 to 45 minutes a day. You know, like if you're doing that 2 to 3 days a week, absolutely amazing. Intensity. So what does that look like? Because everyone thinks to have a good workout, you have to be sweaty, right? That if you aren't sweaty with a super big heart rate, that it wasn't a good workout. Listen, anyone can make a workout more challenging. Anyone can make it more difficult and more sweaty. All you got to do is add some box jumps, toss in some burpees, do some skipping, it's not hard to make something feel hard, but that doesn't necessarily mean, and most of the time it isn't, related at all to, is this an effective workout? There's a big difference between the two. So what we like to encourage is lift heavier in a lower rep range. So lifting light weights in a high rep range, similar to what you would see in like a boot camp style class or the HIITs or the Orange Theories, it's pretty misleading and it's not actually helpful for women whose sex hormones are not doing super great, especially when lean muscle mass and strength are on the decline. Those aren't going to send the signal to your body, hey, I need to get stronger and build more muscle. It's more about having more endurance. So that's not the stimulus that we need, because when we're doing more endurance type exercises, what our body does is say, hey, I need to become more efficient at this. So it correlates that with, I need to do this often and a lot of repetitions. I'm doing them quickly. So your muscle adapts to how can I be better at this task? So what it does usually is actually break down your muscle mass because your body, there's a whole science behind it. I'm not going to get into like the nitty gritty of it. Otherwise we'll be here forever. And again, my training brain can like really digress into this stuff because I do love it a lot. But basically what happens is you have different fiber types. One is going to be smaller, one's going to be bigger, different energy systems. And when you are working in that more endurance style, you're favoring one type of muscle fiber or muscle type. And that type is smaller. It's going to have more mitochondria in it, better capillary density, all these things that make it better at using less calories to do the activity. So let's say you're doing running, for example, but this is the same with the boot camps and all those kinds of things, is let's say you're running for 10 minutes at, I don't know, let's say 4 miles an hour, and you burn 100 calories. If you keep doing that exact same thing all the time, over a week, now it's only going to take you 90 calories. Then it's only going to burn 80 calories. Then it's only going to burn 70 calories as your body gets good. It starts adapting to that stimulus and it wants to be better at it. And it does that by changing a lot in your body physiologically. And your body gets better at doing that task and burning less calories. Each time you do it, it becomes more efficient. We don't want that. We want to maintain as much muscle mass as we can, not break it down to make it so that your body's burning less calories, right? So that's something to be aware of as well. Then we have our mind-muscle connection. Can you feel the muscle you're working? Dial in on that mind-muscle connection. It makes a huge difference between passively and actively moving the weight. So again, I'm going to give the example of a bicep curl. Bicep curl, if I just have a weight and I'm just going up and down quickly, I can do it pretty mindlessly. I feel like I can do that without actually feeling my bicep. If you are going more slowly and you're focusing on squeezing that muscle on the way up and you're focusing on squeezing as you come down. So even as you're lengthening that muscle, you're still focusing on squeezing. What muscle am I using? You're going to that full range of motion all the way to the bottom, all the way to the top. You are going to feel that muscle. Okay. Same with like your hip thrusts. Let's say you're at the top, you can go up and down pretty good without like feeling it too much. If you go more slowly and you focus on squeezing your bum and the hamstrings as you come up and then slowly coming down, still maintaining tension there, your butt's going to be on fire. You are so going to feel it. So paying attention to that mind-muscle connection is huge. Sometimes looking in the mirror can really help you with that. So if you're doing something with your arms, for example, or even your legs, if you're looking and paying attention, that can just help you kind of dial in on that mind-muscle connection. So try that. That's like one of the biggest things that I recommend to women is really focus on slowing down the squeezing, what muscles you're using, because you will be so surprised at how much more of a difference that makes for you and how much more challenging that is. The next one is obviously going to be proper form. Very important. The better your form is, the better your results are going to be, and the less likely you're going to be to hurt yourself or have differences in like asymmetries side to side. So if you're unable to maintain good form, decrease that weight or decrease the number of repetitions you're doing and slow it down. Really pay attention to how you're moving because it does matter. Utilizing your rest times. So in our challenge that we did in the month of February, we did workout programming for everyone. And the rest times were anywhere from like 2 minutes to 3 minutes, depending on the exercise and the rep range and all those kinds of things. And actually rest. So this doesn't mean walking around or skipping or putting away all the weights or bouncing from one machine to the other or shaking your legs. Just sit, relax. Breathe. It's going to feel like you're being incredibly unproductive because in this day and age, we're taught to go, 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 get in, get out. The more I do, the more I accomplish, the better it must be. No, rest times are in there for a reason. And again, as estrogen goes down, we have a harder time accessing energy stores. So we need to allow for our body to replenish all of that so that we can really hit that muscle group again with all that we've got, as opposed to resting kind of, and then like doing the reps, but not getting as many in as that we could. So take that rest time. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel like an eternity. It'll be the longest 2 minutes of your life, but it's also a great way to teach your body to slow down because we are so go, 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 go all of the time. So take that full rest and just sit. So the next one is, how do you structure your workouts? This is a question we get a lot. So choose, first of all, compound multi-joint movements. So this is where you got multiple joints moving at the same time. So these are things like a squat, because at the squat, we're bending at the knee, we're bending at the hip, we got a little bit of movement at the ankle. Maybe same with lunges. Push-ups, we have our elbows and our shoulders moving at the same time. Same with rowing. You want to do those first before you choose single joint exercises like a bicep. Bicep, we're using basically one muscle. We're just moving one joint, right? Same with the tricep push down. Things like that. You want to do 4 to 6 repetitions of one exercise at that heavy weight. So let's say you chose squats. You're doing 4 to 6 repetitions. We're going down slowly. Maybe we're pausing, we're squeezing, we're coming up. And that's 1 rep. Go up and down. Let's say you're doing your 6 times. And then you're going to sit. You're going to take a break for like 2 minutes, maybe 3. And then you're going to repeat that again. You're going to do 3 rounds just like that. Then move on to your next exercise. But again, you need to take that rest. So that doesn't mean that you have to be in there for a long time. Because people are like, oh my gosh, Steph, how am I get my 12 exercises done? You don't have to do 12 exercises. This is where we can help you kind of organize things a little bit, because everyone thinks you got to do more. But more isn't better. Better is better. That's how we get better results, by making better choices, by choosing better exercises, by doing our breaks, by doing better movements, by, better is better. Better form, better mind-muscle connection, better muscle recruitment, better rest times. It's not just more, because that's not going to equate to anything. Just like, making better food choices, not necessarily more food choices. So not like adding only veggies or doing crazy amounts of veggies. It's about balance, making better choices as a whole most of the time, right? So if you eat a lot of broccoli, you're probably going to have a tummy ache. You're probably going to be bloated. You're probably going to be gassy. So it's more isn't always better. Better is better. So now let's talk about equipment. If you're lifting at home, a good set of dumbbells and some resistance bands is a fantastic place to start, but you can maximize anything, honestly, if you are creative enough. Like I used to program quite a bit actually when I was in the rehab space, and we would fill up milk jugs with water. We would, they'd have steps outside, like maybe it's like soup cans. Like there's lots of things that you can do depending on like what you need. So soup cans would be like for smaller shoulder musculature, for example, for a rehab program or something. But there's lots of things, lots and lots of things that you can do. So dumbbells, let's talk about dumbbells first. Dumbbells allow individual movement through greater ranges of motion than barbells do. So think about a dumbbell bench press versus a barbell bench press. In a barbell bench press, you can't move your hands side to side. You are fixed on the bar the entire time. So your plane of motion and like how your joints can move is very limited. Whereas in dumbbells, you can come out a little bit, you can come down a little bit lower, you can twist your wrists a bit to change the angles. There's a lot more freedom of movement, which can be really, really, really great for someone who maybe doesn't have the best stability around a joint, or they're doing some rehab, things like that, or they do have restricted motion because of past injuries or surgeries or whatever it might be that we're trying to work on. So it allows you to move more freely. Obviously, you got to pay attention, be careful, go slowly. But in a strict motion of like a barbell, for some people, like they can't do close grip or they can't do wide grip depending on how their shoulder stability is or past injuries, flexibility, all those kinds of things. I love training with dumbbells because you can also do things one-sided, which is amazing. I love doing like a one-sided row or a one-sided bench press, things like that, because it can really help you identify if one side is stronger than the other, things like that, to really help balance out your body as best as possible. Barbells, they do have the downside of like it's fixed for your joints, but it allows you to lift more weight. So it allows you to perform compound movements like your deadlifts, your squats, your bench press, that engage multiple muscle groups at once. And these multitasking barbell movements can create greater functional strength, force, and power, and you get more bang for your buck in the weight room for some of those movements. So like, for example, doing a deadlift with a barbell, you're going to get a lot more out of that than just doing dumbbell deadlifts, right? Because the amount of weight that you can hold is going to be different, those kinds of things. Then we have cable machines. Cable machines allow you to change the angle, change the height, the attachments used. They can enable you to target specific muscle groups a little bit more easily. And this is really helpful for balancing out like muscle imbalances, healing injured muscles, enhancing your mind-muscle connection. I used cables a lot for shoulder rehab, so working in certain ranges where people might be weak and slowly challenging them by increasing the weight very slowly. So cable machines are awesome. I honestly love them a ton. There are so many great variations that you can do on things, great adjustments for like your height and your body, things like that. Machines are a great place for beginners, and especially those with injuries as well, because machines have a very controlled path of motion, and the place of the greatest amount of force is where a muscle is the strongest. So your muscle is strongest in the shortened position. So bicep, when we're doing a bicep curl, we're strongest at the top, weakest at the bottom. And usually the way the machines are set up is that it's easier when the muscle is lengthened because and then when you're shortening it, that's where the exercise becomes more challenging. So if you're rehabbing a muscle, it doesn't put a ton of strain on that muscle in a typically lengthened position. So it's a great way to be able to adjust things, especially rehab-wise, or if you're just starting and don't feel super confident, it's a great way to build up strength until you feel ready to be able to use the dumbbells and the barbells and the cables and things like that. And of course, if at all possible, what you want to do to get the best results is follow a structured, ideally individualized plan that focuses on progressive overload. So what is progressive overload? We hear this a lot. Progressive overload is the training principle where you gradually increase the intensity of your workouts over time to cause adaptation for your body to build and maintain muscle. So this is where your body is like, oh man, Steph's keep trying to get stronger. She keeps trying to lift these things. I guess we better make bigger muscles so that she can actually do these tasks, because for some reason, this seems to be very important and we're doing this on a regular basis. So the adaptation that we're going to see from that is an increase in muscle gain, an increase in muscle strength. And this principle can be applied not only for increasing strength and or size of muscles, but also improve our cardiovascular systems and things like that. We use progressive overload to help strengthen connective tissue and use it in the rehab process all the time in things like physical therapy. So when I had my osteo clinic, it wasn't just like come in, I'll release stuff and teach you how to activate it. It's like, no, now I'm going to teach you the exercises after you do some of these things that I've taught you to strengthen this, so that we're not going to be vulnerable to injury. We're making sure that we're stable. Like if I know, let's say I've dealt with a lot of hockey players and shoulder injuries because, I always thought it was going to be hips with them, but they get slammed into the boards so much. So shoulders were a huge issue. But I would see where they would be good in a certain range, but then as soon as their arm was higher than their shoulder height, they were very vulnerable, like no strength there. Like if I wanted to, it'd be easy to pop their shoulder out of their socket, to be honest. So they'd be strong in certain planes and they'd be very vulnerable somewhere else. So if they got caught in the boards with like their elbow up or something, that's where they would start seeing a lot of issues, and then it would really affect their ability to play. And again, this can be happening to anyone. We have certain areas where we're going to be more vulnerable strength-wise. So I'm not just going to release tight muscles to allow movement in that range. I want them to be strong in all those ranges as well to avoid future injury. So that way when you're going up to reach for the dishes in the upper part of your cupboard, you aren't like, oh gosh, oh that hurt, and then you're in pain for a few days. We want to make sure that you can do those things. You can lift things above your head. You can play and pick up your grandkids. Like these things are important. So we want to progressively make your joint stronger in all ranges of motion to make sure that you are healthy, you have good posture, and really set you up for success that way, because it sucks being injured. I mean, my father-in-law is in a sling right now because he dislocated his shoulder. That sucks. Luckily, it's his left arm, but it's like he can't really hold his new grandbaby. Like things like that, which is just a pain, or like trying to do up your seatbelt. Like everything is just a lot more challenging. And if you don't have to go through that, like that's ideal. So you want to be strong in multiple ranges. So everyone thinks when it comes to progressive overload, it's just increasing the weight. I need to get stronger every single week. I need to up the weight. That's actually not necessarily true. There are lots of ways to send a muscle building stimulus to make an exercise more challenging. That's going to send that signal to the brain that isn't just always lifting heavier, because let's face it, a lot of women are not comfortable lifting weight up to a certain level, right? You get uncomfortable, you get nervous, fear of injury, you don't feel confident in your movements, which is totally fine. So the first one is increasing that range of motion. So like I mentioned, with a bicep curl, if you're not going all the way down and all the way up, you're missing out on a potential muscle stimulus. So you can lift the same amount of weight, but increase that range of motion. So think about full reps. A lot more challenging to do a push-up all the way to the ground, or maybe you have your hands on something and you can go even further and go into like a deficit, right? As opposed to just going partially the way down, right? That's going to be a lot more challenging. So by increasing that range of motion, your body is actually going to have more muscle activation. Your brain's going to go, okay, all hands on deck. Let's recruit all the musculature that we can to make sure that we are stable, that we are strong. And the more muscle that you can recruit and feel, so pay attention to those muscles, like that mind-muscle connection, the greater ability you will have to grow and strengthen that particular muscle or group of muscles. So want a big butt? Try and go deeper into a squat. Try and go deeper into a lunge. Try and go down into your deadlifts. Focus on squeezing. Get as much muscle recruitment as you can, okay? The next one is an increase efficiency in motion. If you lift the same load and volume of weights, but with better form and with more control, eventually you will be able to do that over time with less effort because your body has adapted. So always try and improve your range of motion in like safe ranges. Obviously, you're not just going to go from, I struggle to sit on a chair to try and get my butt all the way down to the ground in a squat. That's not realistic. But the more you focus on good form, the more likely you will recruit more musculature and have more muscle activation and be able to grow those muscles as well. Training frequency. So maybe you're using the same weights, you're doing the same amount of exercise, but you're just doing it more often throughout the week. This allows you to capitalize on that muscle signal that occurs from exercise, but you don't want to do it too often. Otherwise, you risk overtraining, and due to lack of recovery, you're going to see a lack of progress, increase your injury risk. You can actually see muscle mass go down. So you really have this sweet spot of how often should you hit a muscle group per week. So if you're on YouTube, pay attention to my hands. If you're just listening, hopefully it makes sense. But imagine we're looking at a graph and we have this line horizontally, your x-axis is set to 0. Okay. So when we exercise, we actually break down muscle. So you're going to see the line start to go down underneath this horizontal 0 x-axis. And then it's going to recover and come back up. It'll come back up and then it'll overcompensate because your body's like, "Ooh, that was pretty tough. We should add a little extra muscle on there just in case it happens again." So you want to make sure you hit it again by the time it comes up to its peak. So when it breaks down, it's not going to go all the way under the x-axis this time. It'll overcompensate again, and then you break it down a bit, and you end up having this like ladder effect going up and down, up and down. If you aren't hitting it often enough, you're just going to end up staying at the 0 mark. You're not going to see much changes. If you are hitting it too often, though, you don't allow enough time for this super compensation, we call it, where this muscle mass goes down and then it comes back up. If you hit it too soon, you just keep breaking it down, doesn't recover fully, keep breaking it down. Then you have this down staircase kind of visual of muscle mass actually decreasing. So there is a science to it. That's why programs are built a certain way. That's why good programs look very similar among each other, just with like different focuses, because there is a science to this. There's a rhyme and reason as to why you hit a muscle group, how often, the intensity, all those kinds of things, because that's going to make a big difference in the results that you're going to get. Then we have number of exercises per muscle group. So maybe you're really wanting to grow your butt. So maybe we're working on adding in a couple exercises that really focus on making your butt bigger, making your butt stronger. But again, this is to an extent. We don't want to overtrain in that one area and then we see no changes. You can increase your volume. So you can lift the same amount of weight and do the sets, but maybe you're adding more reps. Maybe your weight is the same, but you're adding more sets to it, so more rounds of it. Maybe you're doing the same amount of work, but you're losing muscle mass. So this results in lifting more compared to your body weight, which makes it a higher intensity. So let's say I'll use a pretty exaggerated numbers here, but imagine someone who's 300 pounds, quite tall, a bigger person, more muscle. If they're lifting 20 pounds, probably not that challenging for them. Then you look at a toddler who's 50 pounds and they're trying to lift 20 pounds. That's really hard. So there is a difference in relative strength and the challenge that has as well. You can increase your load. So obviously lifting heavier weights. Maybe you are increasing your effort. So maybe we're doing more powerful, explosive movements, or we're slowing it down and squeezing and pausing. So that's also going to make it more challenging. You can also, let's say, pause the bottoms. That's a really great way to challenge yourself more. If you've ever tried holding a squat at the bottom for 5 seconds and squeezing your bum while you're doing that and then coming back up and doing 10 of those versus just 10 up and down. Very big difference in how challenging that is. And then again, time under tension is a huge one. So increasing how much time you spend under the load. So maybe you're doing a bench press and you're slowly lowering for 3 seconds. Maybe you're pausing at the bottom for 3 seconds, slowly pushing up. Again, that's going to be much more challenging than just going up and down, up and down. So progressive overload, there's lots of different ways to do it. I talk to people about this all the time. If you don't feel comfortable upping the weights, there's tons of ways that we can manipulate this to make sure you're still getting stronger. But this is a little bit of a double-edged sword, and you do need to be aware of that. So with it, you can see very minimal changes and improvements. You can see very minimal changes and improvements or move backwards if you are doing overtraining, if you are under recovering, if you are not eating enough carbohydrates or enough protein or enough calories, you're going to see fewer improvements towards your goal and even injury. So it's important to pay attention to how your nutrition is and your recovery and your sleep and your stress in your life in general. And is that training going to be too much for you? You need to be able to kind of see what is appropriate for you. Everyone's going to be different, especially with what they can tolerate. So for myself, I don't know how the heck I ever used to work out 6 days a week. I look back at pictures then and I was lighter. I was 10 pounds lighter, but I was actually up a pant size. My body fat composition was, my body fat percentage was a lot higher actually when you look at photos, especially muffin top area. And then when I started working out 3 days a week, 4 days a week-ish, and I was doing more full body type workouts, focusing on lifting heavier, taking longer rest times, the changes in my body were insane. I remember doing a 6-week program where I was doing full body, really focusing on my lower body, doing 2-minute rests in between, focusing on a lower rep range. The amount of compliments, that was probably the time in my life where people were like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because I was working out less, but I was seeing huge changes in my glutes, in my hamstrings, and my quads. I felt great. I was also eating more at that time. And I didn't have a ton of stress in that time in my life either. So it's all about learning to adapt based on what your body currently needs, which I know can be frustrating to hear because you're like, Steph, I don't know what I need. And obviously it's not working because I'm not looking the way that I want. Just message me. I will help you. I'm always more than happy to help and help you navigate what that kind of looks like for you and what's more appropriate. And I always tell people okay, there's different ways to do it. We can decrease how much you're doing and keep your food the same or up it a little bit. If you want to keep doing what you're doing, maybe we have to increase your food intake quite a bit. There's lots of different strategies of how this looks and what will work best for you. And some people, when you tell them they only have to work out 2 to 3 days a week, they're pretty relieved. Some people love the gym, and that's awesome. That used to be me. It's not me anymore. I haven't found my community, my culture yet. So I'm really hoping with this trainer, I can find a community to be a part of again. Because for me right now, working out is just I don't want to do it. I'm going to be honest. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't have the friends here that work out like I had back home. Like it's just different. And that's okay. I'm in a different season of life, and that's fine. The next thing I want to talk about when it comes to pillars of a good exercise program is recovery. So as excited as you might be about getting stronger and progressively overloading, and you're going to challenge yourself all these different ways, you need to make sure that you are getting enough recovery. I cannot stress this enough, especially during perimenopause and menopause. You need to consider not only your training program, but the other stressors in your life and your sleep quality. This is major. You can have the best program in the entire world and leave everything on the gym floor and work so hard and bust your butt. But if you do not recover appropriately, it won't matter. Your body will not respond, which sucks because I hate hearing that story of I am working so hard and busting my butt in the gym and I feel like somehow I might have gotten fatter. What is happening? So let's talk about this. Rest times. Strength training should be done with enough rest in between, which is 2 to 3 minutes rest in between sets. Resistance training creates a stress response on our body, which is good in the short term. However, we don't want to stay in that stress response for the entire duration of our workout because a lot of women can't handle that. Ample rest times between sets allows your stress response to lower before we bring it back up again. Rest days. Sorry, I'm laughing because I'd had a call with a woman not that long ago who was like, I can't do rest days. I feel too lazy. And it's like, okay, we need to get some rest days in there. Like you deserve rest. Just because you're resting does not mean you're being productive. You need to be able to recover. And like, this is something I told people with like the first trimester of pregnancy was like, I feel bad for not being so productive. Like I actually had to nap a few times during my first trimester, and I am not a napper because I feel like it's a waste of time. I sleep pretty good at nighttime. I don't like feeling like I'm not being productive. People are like, Steph, you are being productive. Even when you're resting, like your body is creating a human right now. Like that's a pretty big deal. And I'm like, yeah, I still feel like I'm productive. And people are like that with exercise too, where they feel like if they're not working out, they're going to be losing something, right? But that's not the case. Every time that you work out, you create microscopic tears in your muscle tissues. And when you rest, your muscles start to heal and they grow back stronger, meaning that you'll be able to do the same workout with less effort in the future. You're going to get stronger, then you can challenge yourself again. But if you're skipping the healing process and those rest days, your progress isn't going to match your efforts, which again sucks. And for women during perimenopause and menopause, this is really important because our ability to handle stress goes down, our estrogen levels go down. So having those rest days is really important. Not to mention sleep is so important because when we sleep is when growth hormone is released, when we're having good quality sleep. And growth hormone is going to help kind of compensate for that low estrogen that we're experiencing to help us build muscle. So if we're not getting good sleep, like I will be shocked if you see changes in muscle mass because it's very, 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 very difficult. Some signs of potentially overtraining that you should be aware of. So maybe you're doing too much and it might not seem like too much compared to what you used to, but with other stressors that you have in your life, it can be too much. So here are some signs to look out for that can hint that your workouts are not working for you. A decrease in your performance, even if you are increasing intensity or maybe even decreasing intensity, your performance goes down. So you're not as strong in the gym or seeing changes anymore. Sleep disruptions. This is a big one. We're finding that we're slow recovery, so it's taking a long time to recover and bounce back. Mood changes, and then also a decrease in energy. And all those things can also tell us that you're probably not eating enough for that recovery as well. So you can see that if we're doing things mindfully, strength training is going to be king when it comes to boosting our metabolism in menopause, to help maintain muscle mass, to look fit, to look toned. But strength training isn't the only form of exercise that's metabolism friendly during menopause that I do want to touch on here. And that is walking, which people are like going to roll their eyes, but walking is so important, you guys. It's great for our stress response. So not only is it a great tool for fat loss in menopause, walking also helps lower our stress levels. Low intensity repetitive movements like walking regulate our stress response system, our HPA axis, and can help shift it to the off position so that it helps lower our cortisol and improves our insulin sensitivity. It's also going to increase our NEAT. So perimenopause in general is going to make us more tired and less likely to want to move as much as we used to. So walking is going to help us create calories burned in a way that we can continue for the rest of our life without exhausting our bodies. It actually improves digestion. Walking stimulates our gut, which can help us digest food better and absorb nutrients better. It improves sleep. Lowering cortisol with walking will help our body reset its sleep and wake cycles, leading to better sleep and better recovery from stress, which is going to allow us to build more muscle and see more fat loss. It's also going to help us lower cholesterol. When estrogen is no longer high, we are going to see that cholesterol levels are going to go up, which sucks. Walking helps our body more efficiently use blood oxygen and lower our cholesterol levels. Walking actually helps with our energy levels. Low stress exercise will help the body shuttle blood, oxygen, and nutrients better throughout our body, allowing us to have better energy levels too. It's also going to help us protect our joints because walking is a lower intensity exercise, so it's going to protect those joints. It's not as high impact, so low intensity movement can help keep our bones, tendons, and ligaments super healthy. And of course, it's going to help us balance our hormones by lowering those cortisol levels. Our hormones can communicate more easily. There's less hormonal imbalances, which lead to less hormonal symptoms, which make it a lot easier to lose weight because you just feel better. And the last thing I want to talk about is mobility training. So in our exercise subscription program, this is something we are very big on. There is always going to be anywhere from 3 to 5 to 6 exercises that are a bit of a warm-up, and there's mobility. And it's not just like static stretching. We're moving through different planes of motion. We're strengthening areas that we're typically more vulnerable in to try and strengthen things and get more muscle activation. It prepares our body for activity as well. And mobility is so important because it for a number of reasons. So it's going to decrease our risk of injury. It's going to help us improve our functional movement and counter the effects of being sedentary. So when it comes to decreasing the risk of injury, we're just going to have better range of motion. So with an adequate range of motion, other muscles that you aren't targeting in the exercise often are weaker or start to compensate, and this can lead to injury and pain. So for example, if your hips are tight and you're going into a deadlift, your lower back will try to compensate because you don't have enough movement in the hips, which will cause pain, and it will get worse if you keep going at it. So we need to improve mobility in the hips. In terms of functional movements, these are the things that we go through every day. So sitting down in a chair, going to the bathroom, walking, carrying a bag of groceries up the stairs. You don't think about these movements most of the time, but they require mobility just like workouts do. Bending down to pick up your kids or getting down low to the ground to play with your kids and your grandkids. Like, it sucks if you get stuck down there. And that's something I hear from women all the time. It's like, I can't do this. Or when I used to work in the rehab space, women would be like, I don't know if I want to get on the ground because I don't know if I can get back up. And I'm like, okay, well, this is something we have to work on. Because what happens if you fall down and you can't get back up? That sucks. And we don't think of these things until we're there. You know, like we're like, oh, that won't be me. I'll be fine. That won't be me. And then one day it is. And this is the story. I used to work with a lot of elderly patients as well when I worked in the osteo clinic. And, you know, they'd be like, I just don't know how I got here. I just feel like I woke up and now I just can't get up. I can't do the things. I can't, you know, something falls onto the couch. It's like, ugh. I used to train women and they were like, I loved her so much. Her name was Chris. She was hilarious. And she's like, oh my gosh, Steph, she texted me one night and she's like, oh my gosh, the remote fell underneath the couch. And I just leaned down. I grabbed it. I like kind of maneuvered my body in a weird way. And I got up and she was like preparing to be in pain. And then she wasn't. She was so excited and had to text me, which is amazing. So we don't realize how much these things impact us. And then lastly, it really helps counteract the effects of being sedentary. So even active people today are often sedentary for a very long time, myself included. I sit at a desk most of the time, either podcasting or messaging people or, you know, creating content, whatever that might be, in meetings and calls. And regardless of how active you are, if you're sitting for a long period of time, it's going to cause mobility issues. It can cause poor range of motion in certain joints and tight muscles. And mobility is meant to be complementing strength training. It's not a substitute for it. But for myself, even when I sit, I catch myself like leaning one way and rotating, or I'll have one leg crossed over the other. And I'm aware of this because certain ways that I move, I don't have as much range when I'm twisting one way or the other, or leaning down one way versus the other, or putting one sock on versus the other. And it's from the ways that you sit and you don't realize it until things start to hurt. And you're like, gosh, I've probably been doing this for years. If I would have been like doing some activity with mobility in it, then you're good. So even when I was sitting for a long time and I was more active and doing the mobility, I wasn't feeling these effects as much as I used to, or as I do now. And like being pregnant just like really amplifies it. So it's been something that I've really had to work on a ton. So I know that was a ton of information. I'm just going to reiterate a couple things in summary for you all. So resistance training, we know, is going to help us so much. We all know this. So some ways to help increase your progressive overload that don't include adding more weight or having to be in the gym for longer are increasing your range of motion. So going all the way up, all the way down, slowing down the movement, that mind-muscle connection, focus on squeezing. Even when you're lengthening the muscle, focus on squeezing that muscle, and try and get better at the movement that you're doing. Focus on the muscles you're using. I cannot reiterate that enough. That's like the most important part. And then just slow down the movements. That'll challenge you so much more than you think. We do have a new cycle of our workout program out. It's $34 American a month. The exercises change every 4 to 5 weeks. So you get a progressive overload program. There's mobility worked into it to work in certain areas. We have different focuses every 4 to 5 weeks. There's 3 days a week and 4 days a week. You get access to both. There's also a home version and a gym version. You get access to both. So it's applicable for all women of different expertise. And this month, what we're focusing on is the more burning and toning feeling. So really being able to really target and feel the muscles that you're working. So we're working on that mind-muscle connection to really try and recruit as much musculature as possible. So that's the focus for this next 4 to 5 week cycle. If that's something you're interested in, it's in the show notes. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you need your calories calculated, you know where to find me. I'm always here to answer all the questions that you have. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.